one banner and one banner only, and that's NBA titles.
The Lakers are the world champions. The Lakers have won it
Like that intro.
Yeah, we are live. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to Rings and Things, the home where banners aren't optional. I got my man, Belal.
How's it going, everybody? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me back.
I am so excited for today's show because there is a lot to talk about, Belal.
Oh, yeah.
We got the Lakers and Spurs game to talk about from yesterday. We got Rich Paul commentary and interesting thoughts on his first episode on his podcast.
Everyone's new favorite podcaster.
I know, and ironically on Bill Simmons' Ringer network, which is really interesting. And then last but not least, we got to talk about the roster issues that kind of plagued the Lakers in last night's game and in every loss pretty much this season, right? So the Lakers, we talked about this in the pre-show. The Lakers have won many games this season. I think they are sitting fourth in the West, which is pretty good so far. However, in their losses, I believe there's a stat where they've been all blowout losses, and there's been a common theme in every loss. Teams that have been super athletic, super fast, just looking to push the pace against a team like the Lakers that have looked incredibly slow. And, with LeBron being back, we got the full starting lineup of Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, Austin Reaves, DeAndre Ayton, and Luka Doncic. This team and that starting lineup just doesn't look good. They're not gelling. If you just look at if the eye test doesn't match it, right, and the data also doesn't match it well in terms of the net rating. So, Bilal, talk to me about how the game went yesterday and the overall themes that we're kind of seeing with the Lakers so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit it on the head. You look at the starting lineup. It makes sense if you look at it, but it doesn't make sense when you watch them play, right? If you look at the names, you can see why they're starting that five. But you have no real point of attack defenders there, right? You've got five guys that are great offensive players, and that's what's helped us win a lot of games. But defensively, there's a deficiency. We're not athletic. The roster's not athletic. And like you said, teams are picking up on that. They are running the ball. They're playing at a fast pace, and they're just, attacking. I mean, if you look at the Lakers' defensive rating and wins, 115, which is not amazing, but it's, like a top 15 mark. But in losses, it's 124, which is bottom of the league. So, that's almost a 10-point swing once a team picks up the pace. And, you mentioned when we were talking about earlier, Phoenix kind of gave everybody the playbook. And you see teams like Boston, and other teams that are they're like, okay, we're going to push the tempo. We're going to press up on these guys. We're going to try and force some turnovers, and we go. And so it's been rough in those games. Like you said, 7 losses, all by double digits, and Lakers are 17-7, which is awesome, but 8-0 in clutch games. I think there's a good team there, but the record's a little misleading. And in these losses, those flaws are glaring. It's really easy to see what this team is lacking and why there's skepticism about them being legitimate contenders.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. And it echoes with the roster construction, right? There are just too many one-sided players outside of looking at the big three, big four, right? The number one, the lineup's not gelling. The lineup doesn't make sense in terms of the starting lineup. I don't know how many games or how much film JJ needs to look at it to change the lineup or try something different. But what's also hurting the Lakers, not to just mention everything you mentioned in terms of the opponents, but their bench scoring is one of the worst in the NBA. And I think it is the worst. Yeah, I think I saw a stat just during last night's game when the second unit came in, and I think the Lakers were still kind of in control of the game in the first quarter. The Spurs second unit scored, I think, 20 points versus 2 points for the Lakers.
I think it was 21-2.
It's something crazy where okay, there's clearly not enough balance both places where you would think, okay, how about I take one of these strong offensive players from the starting lineup add them and infuse them into the second unit and kind of balance things out. And obviously, I think the problem the Lakers are having in committing to adding a two-way player like Marcus Smart, and I think a lot of Lakers fans have been kind of clamoring for that decision, is that he can't, his body won't hold up. That's I think that's the real problem. And they're looking to preserve him and his body for, the latter half of the season. And I get it. But the problem is like we're not going to be able to see how they match up against the better teams, right? And you need that chemistry and cohesion now versus like you're trying to think, stick things together later in the season. And it may just get a little tricky. So, that's where I'd like to see, the next steps in terms of like changing the lineup and just seeing what happens. Maybe it's not the right answer. Maybe we still struggle against those teams. But if we can continue to at least make the game competitive and at least have the ability to control the game and the pace, you talked about earlier, we got Luka Doncic who's playing in the MVP form and he can kind of change the dynamic of a game at any point. I mean, all it takes him is one quarter, which is the first quarter, and he scores 20. Like it's nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And like you said, look, maybe Marcus Smart is not the solution. I think it's pretty obvious who needs to go to the bench from the starting lineup is Rui. He solves a lot of problems, right? Rui's a bucket. No, there's no question about it. He's shooting unbelievable percentages. I think he's like top 5 in the league in 3-point percentage right now. But it fits better with the bench, and it gives the bench something they need, and you get a kind of an offensive scoring punch. I know a lot of people are talking about Austin Reaves. We'll touch on that later, but it's pretty clear Rui's that guy. And, maybe it's not Marcus Smart. Maybe it's like a Laravia, coming into the starting lineup just to change it up a little bit. He's a capable defender. And, I think the issue with Rui is he spaces a lot on defense, and you can kind of see him like giving up back cuts, kind of looking around, and he's just not going to be a guy that's going to be able to stop people. No matter how hard he tries, it's not an effort thing, but he really just can't stay with guys. And so, I don't know, JJ's got to do something. You have to make a change. It's not end of the world because they lost yesterday. I know, Lakers lose and Twitter is on fire and the world's coming to an end. It's not that, but like you said, you need some cohesion. You need these guys to know what the lineup's going to be, to get used to playing with each other. I mean, it's clearly not Rui starting, right? And I think you get to a playoff game or a must-win game, and we see it every year where, coaches will change their starting lineup. And we know, okay, if you go to an elimination game tomorrow, Rui's not starting. But, JJ's going to put Marcus Smart in there, or he'll put a Laravia. He's going to get a more defensive player in there. So I'd like to see that earlier instead of, waiting till April or May. But who knows, and there's a hope that maybe, they swing a trade. You get a 3-and-D guy, you can plug him in there and Rui moves to the bench and it's clean. But, who knows who's going to be available, who's not. And I think JJ's kind of got to look at it like, I need to work with what I have and give some guys looks. Even if that's, look, I know Diero's a rookie. I get it. But he is by far the most athletic wing on the team. That's your deficiency. You're not really, it's going to be sink or swim for him. Just throw him in there. What are you going to lose for 15 minutes of seeing what Diero can do? I watch Gabe Vincent get cardio for 15 minutes every game. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are you going to lose? He's a rookie. Sure, I get it. But, I mean, we've seen it in flashes. There was a play against Boston where, I don't know if he missed a shot. Somebody missed a shot. He's going for an offensive rebound. The ball gets tipped. He ripped it away from 2 Celtics. Jaylen Brown was one of them. Like, the guy is an athletic freak. He's a hustle player. Give him some minutes. See what he can do. What's the worst that's going to happen? You know what I mean?
And I'd argue if you throw him with the starters, like the game's just going to be easier for him. It's not like he's going to be asked to do a lot on the offensive end. Right. He's not forced to make decisions, right? So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to probably score the basket or basketball or have opportunities to be finish at the rim, So
run and cut.
And crash hard at the rim, right? Anytime a shot goes up, just crash hard because he's going to get back. The thing I think, like, I agree with you. Like, it could be Marcus Smart, it could be anyone, right? We just got to see it change. The thing is that you got Rui Hachimura, you got LeBron and Luka. They all defend. Like, if you just look at it from a 5-on-5 standpoint, they're all going to defend the same type of offensive player on the other end, no matter what, right? You're not going to put Luka LeBron, especially at this stage of his career, and Rui, who's a slow-footed player, on a point of attack type player, like a guard or dynamic guard or wing. You want to put him in a helper role, right? So like most likely you're gonna have them in the corner and just chilling there, right? But there's only one or two of those players most of the times, right? So you're kind of running out of like roles and rooms for these types of players to actually play meaningful defensive minutes, right? So like you're setting up these guys for failure, right? And I have like Rui has stepped up a bunch. He hit that game winner against Toronto Raptors, and he's having a like offensively an amazing season. You talk about it in terms of his finishing at the rim. I think he's also like top 5 in 3-point shooting. Like he's shooting like lights out, right? But like where things are not just because it's not a balanced lineup is that you can't have 3, and I don't want to say, but like when you look at it from the net rating standpoint, there are 3 negatives out there. Like those 3 are kind of bringing the numbers and like the data and this early hole that the Lakers fall into against the good teams. It's just the way it's going to continue to be, and I don't see it changing. Like there's like Rui's not going to get automatically more athletic or quicker. LeBron's not going to get younger, even though he looked younger last night on Luke Cornett. He had that poster. And Luka is Luka, right? Like he already has the highest usage on the team, and you want him fresh to kind of control and pace the game. And there's been like opportunities for him like where he's looked better on the defensive end, but again, like I don't expect him to be your like lockdown defender, right? Like so I want my superstar who's like 27 in the prime of his career to just be like stowed away in the corner, which what most teams do anyways, right? So like that's I think the conversation, and that's what like the analysis needs to be, right? Like you can't put all these 3 guys who are like forwards and kind of like defend the same player out on the floor. Like it just doesn't make sense.
No, it's not going to work against the good teams. It's not going to work against depth. A lot of these teams roll out 4 guys that can score at all times. And so you have to be able to defend. And the other side of that is, like you said, Luka, Rui, LeBron, they're not guarding the other team's best player. So you're putting a huge burden on Austin Reaves, right? Usually he's picking up the other team's best player, and then he's got to go score 25, 30 on the other side. So it's not realistic. And I think we've kind of seen it the last 2 games. He looks tired. His legs look a little bit slower. He's struggled the last 2 games. It's easy to say, well, they brought back LeBron. He's getting the ball less, whatever. Sure, that's part of it. They're all adjusting to each other. But he does just look tired, and it's a lot of that is like, hey, okay, you got to go guard De'Aaron Fox and then come down here and score 25. And it's just, I think Austin Reaves is a great, great player, but there are very few guys in the entire league that can do that. You're talking the Edwards of the world. And so, like you said, you're really putting your entire starting 5 at a disadvantage because these guys are not going to turn into elite defenders all of a sudden. And I'm not saying Marcus Smart is a 40-minute-a-game elite defender, or Jake LaRavia is an elite defender, but you have to switch up something. These are competent defenders. And, it could make a huge difference because I will give credit. Luka plays defense, or he's playing defense much harder this season than he did last year. Reaves always plays hard. Aiton's been relatively good at the rim. And so they're trying. But, as the coach, JJ's really got to, help them out. And I think it's tough with Rui because he's on an expiring. It's a contract year for him. This is a guy that potentially they look at as a long-term piece. I don't know if, there haven't been any extension talks, so we don't know. But so, obviously they don't want to, burn the guy. So I get why, JJ is walking that tightrope, but, we're a quarter of the way through the season, at more than a quarter of the way through the season. So at some point you have to make that change, and I think we're coming up on a tougher part of the schedule. You've got Houston coming up and some other teams. You're a couple bad losses away from seeing that, which is, it's unfortunate. That's the way it's going to have to go. And I think that'll probably cast Rui in a more negative light than you want to, than if you had just made the move earlier. But, JJ's got to help the guys out.
All right. So before we move on to the next topic, let me ask you this question. And I think you may have kind of answered it already, but assuming Marcus Smart is not the answer and we're benching Rui, who are you going to put in the starting lineup?
I think it's got to be LaRavia, just because you know what he brings. He's been relatively consistent. You know, he's had some great nights, he's had some bad nights, but like, you know what he's going to do. He knows his role. It's not a guy that's going to like force shots or that's going to, you know, throw off the offense. Like, you can plug him in Rui's spot and he can hit corner threes. He defends a little better. I think my guess is that's where JJ goes, because you're also not losing size. You know, you go from Rui to Marcus Smart. That's a small starting lineup. Even though Luka's tall for a point guard, you know, he's 6'8", but he's gonna be playing the 3 in that, you know, in that scenario.
Defense, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think Laravia is probably the most seamless fix. And then that way you allow Smart to still bring some energy off the bench. You let Rui come in and just go get buckets. I mean, the good thing is usually you'll see LeBron go out, right? So if LeBron sits, Rui comes in, you get kind of that chemistry you had earlier in the season. Then when Luka sits, you know, to start the second quarter, I think that's a win-win for everybody. That's my guess is, you know, Laravia is probably the guy that makes the most sense on both ends.
Do you have any concerns with Laravia, like, I guess, bridging the gap with the foot speed issue?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's not the quickest guy, you know.
Yeah.
But he has shown in flashes that he's a capable defender. And I think just the fact that he's a defensive upgrade over Rui balances out kind of what you're losing offensively. Because at the end of the day, you still have Luka, Reaves, and LeBron, and you have Ayton at the rim. I think you can make up the scoring when you send Rui to the bench. And I think Laravia is enough of an upgrade defensively where you can at least give it a look and, you know, see what happens. Again, what's the worst case? You know, the worst thing that's going to happen. He's going to miss some threes. He'll miss shots. Okay, you can go to Rui, you know, if you really need to in a tight game or whatever. It'd be cool if they threw Thiero in there and just see what he could do. You know, I mean,
I would love that.
I saw a stat, lob connections, right? Luka and Reaves are both in the top 10 with 8, and it's pairings, right? Two players, the guard and the big. Both pairings are in the top 10, and I think LeBron already is not far behind. So you've got 3 guys that, you know, if you can get up, will get you the ball near the rim. And we know, you know, Thiero can get up. So I'd like to see like 5-10 minutes a game of him with the starters just to see what it looks like. Because what he brings is theoretically exactly what that starting 5 is missing, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
He's just a rookie.
He's a prototypical player.
Exactly. But you're going to have to go through the growing pains. So I think those growing pains are lessened when he's playing with, you know, Luka, LeBron, AR, Ayton.
Yeah, I wonder if like the concern is like with his knee, like he didn't get like a full like training camp, summer league, any of that. Like he missed all of that. So like that may be part of the calculus, but like every player that we're adding to like the trade machine, like it's a Thiero. Like that's the archetype of player that we're like clamoring for, like in that starting lineup. It makes a lot of sense. Like we talk about Herb Jones, I guess Matisse Thybulle is kind of like more of a budget-friendly player. Andrew Wiggins, like those are the types of players that, you know, Thiero gets comped with. I mean, obviously not on the offensive side, but like defensively, athletically, like he brings all of that to the table. I think that's
why everybody was so excited about that pick. It's just you watch him on tape. Yeah, he's raw, you know. And a lot of people read about his shooting. Oh, he just had this crazy growth spurt. He'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But the athleticism, like it does. There's not a lot of guys that can jump with him. You know what I mean? In the league already.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
exactly.
I'd like to see what he could bring, but I get the hesitation.
All right. So with all these issues, right? Rich Paul started up and debuted his first podcast with Max Kellerman, who also actually, ironically, you know, is coming out of his hiatus. Obviously, I think there was some like contractual like thing with ESPN, like you couldn't like do anything or do like sports shows for like 2 years. But you know, definitely good to hear from him. I definitely enjoyed his analysis. So he got in front of the mic. I think the show is called It's Game Over. Yeah. So and there was a LeBron James Lakers segment after they talked about the Mahomes and the Chiefs. And one of the things that came up, and I think probably surprised by this too. I mean, and I should not mention that LeBron is his client and LeBron is on the team. But one of the things he said, yeah, I know. One of the things he was talking about is the Lakers. Are they true contenders? Max asked Rich Paul this, and Rich Paul says, "No, I don't think they're contenders at all." And
he said Max, he doesn't think they're conference finals contenders. Forget a title.
Yeah. He thinks that, you know, they'll make the playoffs, but first, second round is their ceiling pretty much. And if things break right for them, they could make the Western Conference Finals, but not make the finals or be a contending type team, which obviously caught Twitter by storm. And there was like much debate about things. And I'm sure with the game that went on last night, Rich Paul was somewhere in his mansion kind of smiling, because everything that he talks about and brings up in this, podcast is athleticism, the gap there, the fact that you have these deficiencies in the starting lineup that we just talked about is all present, and the team also is lacking those two-way types of players, right? And there's obviously this also huge, gap with the OKC Thunder, which all teams kind of fall in that bucket too. Like they're just kind of like this, inevitable force right now that looks unbeatable. They've only lost one time. Like I lost track of their record at this point. Like they don't look like they're going to lose at any time.
I'm just assuming 75 wins.
I know, right? So they're at that pace. Pace. So Belal, talk to me. Like, where are you with this? Like, are the Lakers contenders, or are they pretenders, or are they, somewhere in the middle? They're a good team, and they can, if things break right, and if they make the moves that we kind of talked about, whether internally or externally in terms of trades, can they get there?
So I think, when you have this contender conversation, you really need to compare them to Denver and Houston. OKC is just at this point so far and above everyone else. I don't think it's not fair to anybody to compare to them OKC right now. And so, look, I get what Rich Paul said. I agree with him to an extent. I don't think they're title contenders yet as presently constructed, but I think it's pretty clear they can be a top 4 team in the West. And if you can be a top 4 team in the West, things can break your way. If, the seedings break where OKC is 1 and Denver is 4, they have a shot at the conference finals. Houston is great, but I feel like, the Lakers can match up with them, and you never know what happens once you get to the playoffs. And I think the Lakers' strategy right now is they understand their defensive deficiencies, and JJ's just like, look, we got to guard you, but you got to guard us. We have 3 guys that can control a game at an all NBA level. Nobody else has that. And so, I think that is a threat against everybody except OKC. So I do agree with him that, I don't think they're title contenders. I think they can make a conference finals if everything breaks exactly their way. Yeah. But like I said, you have to compare them to Houston and Denver, right? And so if we look in the standings, they're there. They're with them record-wise. But, you got to look at the data. That record is a little misleading. Like you had mentioned earlier, they're 8-0 in clutch games, which is amazing. Best record in the league. They have the best defense in clutch time. But, the 7 losses, all blowouts. And once you start looking at the ratings, Lakers defensive rating is 17th in the league. Offensive rating is 7th, which actually I was kind of surprised. It's lower than I had expected. But their net rating is 1.6, which puts them 11th in the NBA. So, the record that fits that is probably 3 or 4 games less than what they actually have. And then, you look at some of these other teams that are considered contenders. OKC's, 17 is their net rating. Nobody's touching it. It's absurd. But Denver's, 8.8. Houston is 10.8. So true contenders, there's a gap there, and you can see it in the data, right? It's not just in the record. And I think that's kind of where you see the gap between the Lakers and the Houstons and Denvers right now. Again, in a 7-game series, though, when everything slows down, the Lakers got 3 guys that can control a game start to finish. Yeah. And so that has to count for something. But Rich is right. I mean, like, it might have pissed off a lot of Laker fans to hear him say it, and people, and you always raise your eyebrows because it's LeBron's agent. But he's right; they're not finals contenders right now. They can make a conference finals, but everything has to break their way. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. That's what these games are showing us. Is that they're good, but maybe not elite, not yet.
Yeah, I think where people get annoyed with it is that LeBron is on the team, and that's his agent, and that's your client, and you're talking about it in a way where it's not a positive light, but facts are facts, right? Like he is right in his assessment, and we saw it break right in terms of last season in the playoffs in that first round exit against the Timberwolves. My concern is, we have yet to see the changes internally that we just talked about and see how that shakes out against like Houston scares me just because athletic players, and
So much length.
I know Sengun is going to give us trouble. Durant will give us trouble as well. And there's just like so many athletes there. Denver, I feel like we can play up with them. Like we showed that ability even last season against them. I think, we just have to, be on our P's and Q's against Denver because they have Jokic and he's a monster. Like, that's a best in the world type player that they got. And
absolutely.
But what concerns me, obviously, is like in terms of like a true mark of contenders, and you talk about it from the data side, you always have to have that best player in the world, which we have that checked off with Luka.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to be in, like top 10 offensively, top 10 defensively, right? Like
That's
those
the
are the
mark of
types of
contender.
teams that have made the playoffs. And you need to have the two-way ability, at least at this like stage in the NBA, right? Like the way the game is played, it's played full court. You get all the way spaced out. It's 5 out. You need two-way ability, and we just don't have that. And we haven't had that for years because, our GM and cohorts decided to make that trade away of all our two-way players, let Caruso go for the Westbrook, not the Westbrook trade for Caruso, but it all happened in the same summer. And it was one of the worst off seasons
Ever.
for the Lakers ever. And I think Rich Paul actually talked about it too. Like they kind of were early to the blueprint of what a contending team should look like.
Yeah.
And they just kind of, all right, we're pivoting. Like LeBron's getting older. We need another ball handler. And we kind of want to try this big three situation. And I honestly, like if gun to my head, I think Pelinka did that because the Brooklyn Nets formed that big three.
100%.
100%. Like there was, in their eyes, in their opinion, they thought there was going to be a crash course between the Nets and the Lakers in the finals. Both teams did not make the finals the next year.
Both teams flamed out spectacularly. I mean, I think that's a good example of the difference. It's a little bit of a segue, but like Rich Paul was talking about championship organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
That pivot from Pelinka from what is now the blueprint. I mean, you look, teams are playing bigger, physical, more aggressively. That 2020 Laker team was ahead of its time. And I think they were so good because you had two bigs. You had LeBron at the 3. You had size with your guards. It wasn't a small team. And it was very similar to what you're seeing today. And instead of building on that blueprint and realizing, hey, nobody else in the league is doing what we're doing, it won us a title, he, overreacted to another team. It was a copycat move. Like you said, look, in 2021, if AD doesn't go down, I will believe till the day I die that team repeats. That team was a juggernaut.
100%. I mean, yep.
Before LeBron sprained his ankle, they were the 2 seed, and AD had been out a month. Like it was like nuts. That team had so much depth, but there was such an overreaction to Brooklyn having a big 3 and we need to course correct. And he gutted that team. Like you said, the only thing saving that trade right now from being the worst ever is Paul George and Nico Harrison. Like that's it. That trade was so bad. It set the Lakers back half a decade. Even today, like you said, they're still dealing with the after effects. There's no two-way players on this roster. It's the least athletic roster in the league, which is crazy to me. The game's getting faster. Like you said, the offenses are spread out, shooting everywhere, and the Lakers, outside of their stars, lack shooting or defense in every player. You either have a guy like Rui who can shoot but can't defend, or you have a guy like Smart who can defend, but he'll have a good shooting night, one every 4 or 5 games. And so it's rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
Because the top end talent is there. But I think it's such a glaring hole in the front office and the scouting department, and just you really can tell how good a front office is by the rest of that roster, what their depth looks like, what the other guys on the team look like, how much the roster makes sense. It's great to have Luka, Reaves, and LeBron, but outside of that, it doesn't make a ton of sense if we're being honest.
What's funny to me, and like people talk about this on Twitter a lot, is that like if you put any of these other superstars on these contending teams with this roster makeup, they'd struggle just as much, right? We talk, like people talk about like, oh, Luka is like, I wouldn't start a franchise with Luka Doncic because he's such a negative on defense, right? But you're not putting that into context with like, for example, imagine Luka Doncic on the OKC Thunder.
Right.
Do you think that they wouldn't be able to contend?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's one guy in the entire league that you could drop on this Lakers team, they'd be contenders, and that's Jokic. And he's just like so far and above, beyond better than everybody else. He could make any roster a contender. I really believe that. He's incredible. But I agree with you. Put SGA on this team. Put Giannis on this team, Brunson, whoever you want.
I mean, they'd struggle. They would be first round exits, whatever you want to cap them at their floor or ceiling. They would struggle because and this goes actually like in the history of the NBA. Like if you look at any of the teams that have won championships, the superstar player has always been supplemented with an excellent two-way wing. Who was Jordan's teammate, Belal?
Right. The best
One
wing
of the
defender in
best
the league.
two-way and defensive players in the history of the NBA, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You cannot win like basketball games without having the right balance and the right players surrounding your superstar. And I think there's going to be like there's going to be a pretty like quickly like fork in the road. We're going to see it like as fans. Either they make the decisions come the trade deadline, or they punt and they wait for the offseason and just do like a full clean house situation. Because that's like, if you look at it just contractually, there's only a few players like under contract next year. Like LeBron's gone. Reaves is a free agent. Luka, I think, is the only player that goes. I mean, Adu Theoro too. Like Adu Theoro and Bronny James.
Aiton's got a player option.
And Aiton's got a player option, which I'd expect him to.
Both have player options.
Yeah. But I mean, all in all, it's pretty open. It's an open canvas. Like they have the ability to kind of transform everything and change a bunch. So that's where I like, I get all these comments and I see all these mentions about like, yeah, the Lakers are stuck. Well, the Lakers are stuck because the team's not balanced because of like years kind of in the making. And there are two things where they could have like mitigated that, right? They haven't hit in the draft in a while. Like they have not been able to produce and draft a two-way player. Dalton Connect looks like he doesn't fit. JHS was a bust. He's not even on it. I don't even think he's on an NBA roster. Adu Theros are like, kind of
our last hope.
Silver bullet. Like he's our last hope. And I don't think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have not made any like home run, like free agent signing, like, MLE, like Gabe Vincent. That was a horrible signing, right? Imagine like, I think if we were able to get like Bruce Brown, which he looks kind of right now, but like that year he would have been a great like kind of signing. And like now you kind of extend that player. We have not hit on either of those departments, right? So what's the other area that we can hit that? It's the trade market. And we have been kind of
not great there either.
Not great.
I mean, outside of the best trade ever,
outside of Nico Harrison blessing us. Let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think, again, that's a really good indicator of where the deficiencies are in the franchise, right?
Yeah.
Your GM can't sign anybody. That makes a difference. Every signing is a guy that cooked the Lakers, and they sign him, and like 9 out of 10 free agent signings end up being a bust, right? They draft, the last couple of years especially, they have not been drafting on need. They've been looking for a home run, right?
That's the problem.
The best draft pick of the last 4 or 5 years was Max Christie. And unfortunately, obviously, he had to go in the Luka trade. It's funny, when that trade happened, that was the guy I was like, man, like obviously AD, it sucks.
Me too. Yeah, I wish we kept
Max Christie is
perfect.
Like prototype 3-and-D player.
Next to
yeah.
But
so like they haven't been able to find guys like that in the draft. They haven't been able to find guys like that in free agency. It's been a multi-year issue. And I think, I'm sure you're in kind of the same boat. I think with new ownership, that's going to change. My guess, we were kind of talking about this before. I don't see Rob Pelinka making it to next season just with the way Mark Welter operates. It's so clear he's out of his depth, and that, teams around the league don't like dealing with him. GM, it's not just from when he was an agent. You hear stories like he doesn't return calls. He'll take a trade to the finish line and then just ghost a guy. Like, people don't like him. And you need a GM that other teams want to do business with, and a lot of people kind of, surprisingly, it's not a big talking point. Magic Johnson is Mark Walter's partner with the Dodgers. And, he's not the biggest Rob Pelinka fan. So I'd be surprised if Pelinka is there much longer. I think a fix is coming to the front office, but the question now becomes, okay, does that mean they're gonna, punt this season? Do you want to hold on to those assets? Let whoever's coming in use all of them, or are you going to go pursue an upgrade? It's a tightrope. I feel like you can't punt a season like this from Luka. Like, he looks like one of the 3 best players alive right now. But obviously the team is not built to fit around him perfectly. And I would give Pelinka leeway on that because you did just trade for him a year ago, but his track record indicates to me that he's not going to be able to build that contender around Luka. And when you have a guy that's that good, you have to have a front office that can take advantage of that. And I think, all of these issues we're talking about, all of these problems with the roster and, the one-way guys and what's missing, it all boils down to who's putting the team together.
Mhm.
And the guy that put this team together that's lacking two-way players and shooters is the same guy that put last year's team and the year before and the year before. And like, we just keep having this conversation over and over and over. And if we see it, Mark Walter sees it. So I don't know. I mean, all of these fixes, there are ways to fix this. I don't have faith in the guy making the calls right now to be the guy that's going to fix this.
Yeah, I guess the conversation really begins with Rich Paul talked about it, in comparing Miami Heat organization, the Lakers organization, right? And we kind of know this as fans, like the Lakers organization is run by a mom and pop shop, right? It's like a family owned business, and they have decided in how to distribute like the finances of everything and how to like handle the superstars. And they've looked to cut corners elsewhere. And obviously that worked like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, where it didn't matter as much, right? Like you can market and showcase the fact that you're in LA and you got the big market. But now with players and social media and building your own brand, you can do whatever you wanted in Milwaukee that you could get 15 years ago in LA. But where the Lakers front office has been lacking, and we talked about this in the pre-show, is there's no pro scouting department. So if you don't have a pro scouting department, how will you know, and how will Pelinka know? Does anyone think that Pelinka watches any other teams and any other games? So how is he going to be able to assess and identify talent from other teams when free agency hits or when you need to make a trade?
Right.
I don't think he can do that. He's only one person.
Yeah, and I mean that's why every signing in free agency is a guy who plays well against the Lakers.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a joke like 3 years ago, but it happens every summer. Now it's like, okay, this is not a joke. This is crazy. At some point, you have to fix this. And like you said, I mean, things have changed. Look, there's always going to be an advantage when you are the Lakers, when you're in LA, but it's not as big of an advantage as it used to be. And I think we've seen a shift in the league where owners are now multi-billionaires, people with real money and assets and connections behind them, and they're building out elite organizations. And I think that's why there's so much excitement around this, sale of the team. And obviously you watch what Walter did with the Dodgers, and it's just like, okay, yeah, there's a salary cap in basketball, but like you said, it's around the edges. The first thing you did with the Dodgers,
there. You can spend as much as you want, from like the pro scouting department, your international
analytics,
department, analytics, your health and wellness. You can spend as much money as you want, facilities, film, everything.
Yeah, I mean, you can give yourself all the advantages that will attract players, along with the Lakers and LA. But it's also, we are top of the line everything. Like we are the vision of what a great franchise should be. I mean, the Dodgers, we keep tying this back, but they basically invented how baseball teams look at analytics with their analytics
100%.
department.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a reason to be optimistic there. But when I saw what happened with the Buss Brothers and the teardown of the scouting department, to me, that was a signal that Walter's people are coming in and Genie's people are going out. And that goes up to Pelinka. And, at the end of the day, like this brand is just so insane and it's such an advantage. And I think new ownership understands that, where they will put the right pieces in place and the right people in place, build out departments the right way, and give the Lakers a true advantage. You're on the clock now. You have Luka Doncic he's not even in his prime yet. He's heading into his prime. And so, I think that urgency will benefit the Lakers. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to help much this season. That's kind of where we're at. It's rough, but Rich Paul's right. This is not a championship organization right now. It's a organization with a lot of championships, but I don't think anybody would put the Lakers in the top 20, of the best front offices in the league, top 25. Like the Lakers front office operates like the Wizards and the Hornets of the world. They operate like a bottom 5 team, but it's just the Lakers. So you can overcome that, but that'll only take you so far.
Yeah, I got two points on that. One is, you mentioned the Mark Walter thing, and obviously he's bringing all this, financial back end and the support, and we've already seen the evidence from the Dodgers organization from winning back to back. But you think, these guys that are coming in are looking to lose and be like ashamed of themselves? Like,
Right.
No way. Like they've worked their asses off all their lives to be winners in a sense. Like, obviously, like from a financial standpoint, like they're just continuing to look for investments and continuing to increase their net worth. So I don't see any world where they don't do like a full assessment and full teardown and just really evaluate what the real future is. I think I see this like two ways. Like, one, it's like the way you mentioned, where like they had this conversation with Pelinka at the end of the year and kind of show him his way out, or they basically still keep him. He's kind of like the face, but they put all these like smart-minded people that are making the actual decisions. Pelinka's just the one who's just directing it, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? That's the other way I could see it happening.
I mean, that's what they have with the Dodgers, right? They have a president of baseball operations and a general manager, but they have like executive level people in every department making all the decisions together. It's not a one man decision, and I definitely see the Lakers going that way, like you said.
They added those two guys as consultants, right?
Yes, yeah. They added the Dodgers GM is Friedman.
Yeah, they added those two as consultants. So like, I don't think that's
the greatest baseball team ever.
Knock on. Yeah.
I mean, look, I like you said, you don't get to the point where you can buy the Dodgers and the Lakers without knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't buy the Lakers just to say, hey, I bought the Lakers. You buy the Lakers to come in and just annihilate people. You look at what the Dodgers are doing. It's so absurd, right? It's like you're talking, there's going to be a lockout in baseball. They need a salary cap. And the only thing that these guys are doing is saying, hey, we're going to spend whatever it takes on the field and off the field, right? And so, yeah, the NBA has a salary cap, sure. But I guarantee you, the Lakers will have the most elite, amenities available. They'll have the best training facilities, the best staff. They'll have the best analytics department. They're going to spend to make sure that this is an organization that matches the brand. So I'm with you. I think, look, if Pelinka stays on, like you said, he's not going to be the only guy making decisions anymore. Jeannie gave him all the titles. It all goes to Pelinka. That's just if the Dodgers are any indication of what the Lakers will look like, that is just not how this group operates. And I think that's something to be excited about for sure. And I think there's a reason the rest of the league is like, oh crap.
Yeah.
This is like the worst possible person to buy the Lakers. So
the only thing that sucks is the OKC Thunder are so good.
Oh
like they're so good that they're loaded with draft picks, and every freaking pick that they make, they're all hits too.
But the thing with them is they do hit on every pick, but a big part of that is they have the best development in the league. Like nobody develops players like these.
Yeah.
You look at, I'm tangenting a little bit, sorry, but I was just talking to somebody about the Thunder. You look at AJ Mitchell, right?
Yep.
There have been stretches this year. This guy looked like an all-star. He was a two-way last year, and they were giving him 15, 20 minutes a night. They're throwing him in the rotation. They're letting him get that experience. And then the season ends, and they're like, hey, let's give him like 3 years, $7 million. So you're like, hey, there's no way with this cap that they can keep this roster together. And then you go look at these contracts, and they got like Wiggins and Wallace, and these guys are all signed for like $3-4 million a year. It's just like,
it's a joke. Yeah.
But it's because they find them late in the draft, and they develop them into legitimate rotation players. Their system is built it's so well, everything top to bottom is so well put together. That's why they're as good as they are. And like you said, and they have all these picks. The Clippers picked the best season ever to be terrible.
Yeah, that's the thing too, man. We're having all these conversations, and it may not matter
Yeah, they might just win titles into the 2030s, like no matter what we do,
that dynasty. Let's switch gears a little bit. We'll still, keep on the topic with Rich Paul, but another interesting comment he made, and it was about Austin Reaves. And again, this is another interesting point and another interesting layer, because if we go back to the offseason, there was a big decision that LeBron James needed to make, right?
Mm-hmm.
One decision that came to me as a surprise, and I'm sure you as well, is this is the first time, and he always does this 1+1 deal. If anyone doesn't know, in terms of his extensions when he's with the team, he always opts out and it renegotiates another deal. And most of the time, it's another 1+1. This is the first time ever in his career he opted into his deal. Right? So clearly there was, I'm sure, and many have speculated that, a offer was not on the table, right? And obviously there's no place for him to go, right? Like, this is his team. This is where he lives. His son's on the team. So he opted in. Now,
nobody had cap space either.
And nobody had cap space either. So
I mean,
that was the choice was made pretty much for him.
Yeah.
Right. So it's interesting now to hear Rich Paul, his agent, of said client, to talk about Austin Reaves in a light where, similar to this kind of Miami Heat structure and organizational standpoint we just talked about, but the Spurs, which were a winning dynasty, winning team that had a player in Manu Ginobili who on probably 29 other teams would start. But they had an agreement with him, and I don't think it's an agreement, but in a understanding where, okay, we kind of already have our lineup set, but where you would be able to impact the game, and he played starter minutes anyways, it's not that big of a deal, but where you would be able to kind of impact the game is leading a second unit, getting your shine, and coming off the bench. And he made this, similar kind of factual statement for Austin Reaves to be this in this mold. And I found it really interesting because, when you put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and, we're also kind of seeing this team where Austin Reaves is kind of struggling now because he has to defend the point. He has to be the point of attack defender in this current makeup of the team. I personally think he's talking about the wrong starter.
Yes.
Rui Hachimura should be the one that he should be pointing this argument on, not Austin Reaves, who has been, pretty much an all-star, all NBA level, like, performance production-wise so far this season. But to top it all off, he is probably one of the best players that we have on our team that can fit with any lineup. He can play off ball. He can play on ball if he needs to be playing pick and roll. I actually have made the argument that, like, he is our, like, change of pace player, right? Like, Luka is methodical. LeBron at this point is just like, okay, you feed him in the post and he'll kind of, either he's bully balling or he's just gonna, do his driving kicks. But Reaves is our one guy where, okay, if he gets a switch on a bigger dude, I know he can attack in terms of his foot speed. He's actually one of the players that actually has our foot speed advantage. So, like, I didn't really, like or agree with his comments in terms of the Austin Reaves benching thing. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was obviously a conversation in the summer, right? People were talking about it. Even I was like, hey, maybe, you could put him in the Ginobili mold. He can come in. But the guy's 9th in the league in scoring. He's averaging 28 a night. Like, he's played himself out of these conversations. You can't, I feel like you can't talk about Austin Reaves and be taken seriously if you think he should be coming off the bench at this point, right? He's been all NBA level, and it's not for like 5 games. We're 25 games in. I mean, and then we saw him without Luka and LeBron put up 50, 40 buzzer beaters. Like, the guy's a player. He's an all-star level player, right? I get the Ginobili comps. Personally, I think it's kind of lazy because you're really not properly, putting the context of the game. Yeah, Ginobili came off the bench. Like you said, Ginobili played starter minutes, and he played in an era where you could survive playing big minutes or starting halves with only 2 scorers on the court. So they had Tony Parker, they had Tim Duncan, they had enough offense. Ginobili was coming off the bench because they needed guys to guard the Kobe's of the world. You needed a guy that could play defense to start the first quarter, start the third quarter, not let these guys get hot. And then you bring in Ginobili, and like you said, he's playing 35 minutes a night anyways. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. I think it's lazy. I think there's a lot of there was a little bit of an undertone with some of the comments from Rich Paul, right? Like we talked about the contenders thing, we talk about the championship organizations, now about Reaves. Obviously, he's a little bitter about how this situation has played out with LeBron. You know, it's pretty clear there was no offer on the table, and it's pretty clear that at the end of this season, the only way he's going to continue as a Laker is with a massive pay cut. Which, sorry, I mean, it's the greatest player probably ever. But like you watch games now, you can't win with him making $50 million. Like it's impossible.
Yeah,
like,
you can't.
The writing's on the wall, right? He's going to be great in stretches, but the dude's 41. Like it's not his fault. But eventually, you've got to adjust. And so that's one place I'll actually give Pelinka and the Lakers front office credit is they saw the writing on the wall there. This is clearly Luka's team, right? But it's also Austin Reaves' team. Like Reaves is that good. So to me, it's ridiculous at this point to be like, hey, let's bring him off the bench and get a little advantage with the second unit. No, man, he's an advantage with starters. He's an advantage against everybody, and it's not even a conversation for me. I think it's just it's kind of crazy that he said that. The other crazy thing he said was Norm Powell and Reaves are on the same tier of players.
Oh yeah, I didn't understand that one.
Norm Powell's a great player, right? Don't get me wrong. But like Rich Paul's not watching Austin Reaves. Like,
yeah, it's weird. It's weird
like,
how
many
much
guys can put up 20 and 8.
But like his assessment of Austin Reaves is just so bizarre,
off. And it was also really different than LeBron's because LeBron's been on Reaves since
he's huge, rookie
year. Like I don't know, it was weird. I don't know. We're talking a lot about his comments, with rightfully so.
I just think like you hit it at one point, but you meant there was like a lot of undertones there, and I think like part of the calculus or part of the thinking, I bet like from him is that like, oh, you should move on from Reaves, like you have a appreciating asset, and you should trade him for pieces that make sense to win in the Luka LeBron window. Well, no, I think the front office, Pelinka and everyone, like you just said, we should give them credit. No, you shouldn't trade like a 24, 25-year-old who I don't care like what his next contract or what his next number looks like, because he deserves that money and he's part of the future. 100%. Right. And my also other pushback is that like you're not going to get anything of value with trading Reaves right now. Like even if you did it like coming into the season, if you did it at the deadline, because he only makes 12 million. What do you expect to get back for a player that's going to be making 30 million in 30 plus, whatever it is, in like a few months? And if you make the assessment and you see how things play out with the Luka and Reaves, led backcourt with defenders and athletes like we talked about next season, like we got to see that first. If it doesn't work out, I bet you 29 teams will sign up and trade for Austin Reaves.
Absolutely.
And you will get the return that Desmond Bane just got.
Exactly. So that's where, look, I think if someone offered 4 first-round picks at the deadline for Austin Reaves, the Lakers would say no, and I would agree with them saying no, right? But that's where his value is. I think he's played himself to a point where it's like, I'm not throwing this guy into a trade unless you're talking to me about like Giannis. So the other thing is Rich Paul. Yeah, I think he's definitely trying to downplay Reaves' importance on the Lakers, and I think that's to kind of build up, what LeBron brings. Look, LeBron is LeBron, right? But Rich Paul is also talking about he would make the Knicks better, and he would make 29 other teams better, and he's selling. A little bit about how LeBron's still got it. He can still play. Somebody will sign him. But, back to the Lakers, look, we've seen it with Luka twice, right? Luka and Brunson, conference finals. Luka and Kyrie, NBA finals. Reaves and Luka with, like you said, defenders and shooters and athleticism behind them. I mean, outside of the juggernaut that is OKC, I don't see why that can't be a finals team. Reaves is that good. Like, I think people are really struggling to accept how good Austin Reaves is. Because it's unprecedented. How many guys go undrafted and then are top 10 scorers in the league? They're all-stars. They can play off of Luka Doncic and LeBron James, and on some nights look like the best player on the court. It's hard to really fathom what he's doing. And I think people still think, oh, he's a Laker. Oh, it's a hot streak. Oh, he's overrated. It's like, dude, he's a bucket. And like, he is a legitimate star-level player. And, he's going to sign his next deal. And there's going to be a lot of talks about how much he makes, and people are going to say it's a crazy contract. And then you're going to be like, okay, Emmanuel quickly makes $35 million a year. So like if Austin Reaves makes $35 million a year, I don't think that's a crazy contract.
Yeah, what's
you know
the
what I
big
mean?
deal? Yeah.
OJ Anunoby, great player. He makes $43 million a year. I'm probably taking Austin Reaves as my top 2 player over OJ Anunoby. So it's like whatever he gets paid will still not be enough, and people are still going to be mad about it. But he's that level of a player now. So it is what it is. No matter what Rich Paul wants to say about his tier or his impact or whatever, Austin Reaves is that dude, and I think people need to give him that respect.
Yeah, and people need to also realize that there's a few things that you need to look at. Like, don't look at the annual like salary amount. Look at how much of the percentage of the cap are they taking up, right?
Right.
So Luka's obviously going to take a lot because he's on that large max deal. But then Reaves is your number 2 guy. He's going to take up another chunk. But if you kind of divvy up the rest of the numbers, because right now we have 3, you got LeBron. So he's basically going to be taking 80-70% of LeBron's slot, right? Assuming LeBron doesn't sign back to like a max deal, right? So now you have a ton of money and cap space that gets increased year over year to play with.
Yeah.
Which we just didn't have that flexibility last season. Like literally the only flexibility we had is we let DFS go, which turned into Ayton and Jake LaRavia, which was like a great decision.
Yeah, because he hasn't played a second this season and nobody knows when he's coming back.
You remember the Lakers crash out? That like, in media, like, oh, I can't believe the Lakers let DFS go, and he has not played. Like, I think he just started to come back and play at least some like 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 like in practice. You know what I mean? He's slowly ramping that up. But that said,
yeah, and look, I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna wrap it up, but you go ahead. One more point.
Well, just real quick, like again, like you were saying about Reaves is going to take up a chunk, Luka's going to take up his chunk. The cap is always going up, right? It continues to rise, so that's not really as big of an issue as people think. And also, I don't think people realize that trade saved the Lakers a ton of money because Luka he's like the 8th highest paid player in the league, and once a bunch of these extensions kick in, he's going to be like 20th, which is like absurd for a guy of his talent level. So you have that. You have Reaves even at 35. Like you still have the ability to get another max player in there and build out like a legitimate roster. You just have to be smart with those contracts. And I think you want to talk a little bit about potential targets. Like there are some guys whose deals. I mean, like, look, you want to just segue? We can go straight
just segue.
to it. Like,
just take it.
Look, everybody's talking about Herb Jones, right? Everybody keeps talking about Herb Jones makes like $17 million a year for the next 3 years. So if I'm paying Austin Reaves and Herb Jones $52 million a year, great use of my cap.
That's amazing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think people get fixated and stuck on numbers with certain guys, and it's just like, dude, it's not how much you're paying one guy. It's what does the rest of your roster look like? And at the end of the day, the cap is $200 million and climbing. If 85 million of my 200 million goes to my 2 best players, I think I'm better off than most teams. So it's just, sorry. We'll move on to other targets, but the cap thing is just a crazy conversation to me. Like Austin Reaves is going to get paid. I'm happy that he's going to get paid, and I'm very, very happy that it's most likely going to be with the Lakers because I think he's just that good.
Yeah, 100%. So I think, we said a lot about earlier of the Lakers' woes and the internal decisions that they can make to improve some of those deficiencies. I think where I wanted to touch upon, and a lot of the discourse coming in from the offseason was, okay, the Lakers need to just make one trade and they're just instant contenders like Wiggins or Herb Jones. But I think the more I think about it, I think they need to make a few trades. Like I think they need to bring in a few pieces, and let's state the fact that we don't know if they're going to pull the trigger or not because of all the XYZ, Mark Walter coming in and everything. We don't know about that, but where the record is, they're 4th in the West, but it's like all jumbled. They were like 2nd yesterday, right? So like they have a great record, and Luka's in his prime. I would like to think that Luka will apply pressure to LeBron, and all these guys will apply pressure because they want to compete, and that's what players are like, and JJ will want to compete and try to win. So where do the Lakers go from here, right? Because I think they need to trade for a wing, a 2-way wing. They need to trade, I think, most likely for another backup big. They cannot rely on Maxi Kleba. And I forgot to even mention, I think they have around $45 to $50 million in expiring contracts. So
Yeah.
that also kind of plays into free agency, and like you could kind of like make trades now for targets that you were going to target in the free agency, but now you're just trading and mixing up salaries to get to where you need to get to. So where's your head at with that in terms of that construct and trying to improve the team kind of around the margins, not making like a big like home run type of deal, which
Sure.
I think is not going to happen. Like I don't think they're going to move off of that 2031 first round pick, but if there are ways to, one thing that also came to mind, sorry, I just thought of it, but if you trade that 2031 pick and split into 2 first round picks, that's one avenue, which I think the Phoenix Suns did last year.
Phoenix did that with Utah.
Kind of allows you to at least still have 1 first round pick, whereas you send out the other one. But yeah, let me hear your thoughts on that.
Well, so once you get to the summer, you're open, the 2033 comes into play. So you're going to get another first to play with by default. But I think my guess is what they'll do in terms of this season is if a guy is available that can be a long-term piece, like an Herb Jones, they'll put the first on the table, I would think. Bill Simmons' podcast, he was like, connect Cleveland a first for Herb Jones. I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah.
If New Orleans will take that, like close it tomorrow. You know what I mean? So a guy like that, yeah, I think the first will be put on the table. I don't think that guy will be, I personally don't think he'll become available. And if he does, I don't think they'll send him to the Lakers. I remember I saw like a graphic of fan bases and how much they hate other fan bases, right? And it was kind of like a rating, like online, like their tweets, how bad they are. It was like a whole mixed thing. It's a bunch of Celtics, fans and all the teams they hate in the top 5. But the only one that was also there was Pelican fans and how much they hate the Lakers. Like there's still bad blood there.
Oh, sure.
From the
100%.
AD trade. Like I personally like, and you're starting to hear reports, the Lakers are going to pursue Herb Jones. Once I hear that, I'm like, okay, he's off the table. That's not – it's just anytime you start linking a guy to the Lakers, it never happens, right? It just doesn't happen. So, I think, in terms of team building, they will – if a guy is there that's a long-term fit, I think they'll put that first on the table, especially knowing they have another first coming into play. Really, I think what their overall strategy is more important to me than if they actually make a move this year. Like, obviously, I would love to see them contend this year. But I think, OKC is so far above everybody else. I don't know how realistic that is anyways, unless Giannis is like, I want to play with Luka. But I think the way the league is going, it's not about free agency anymore. It's not about cap space. When was the last time a major all-star level player switched teams and like shifted the league via free agency? It just doesn't happen. So it was like KD or Kawhi maybe, but Kawhi, nothing came out of it. But that we're talking 6 years ago. Like it doesn't happen anymore. You build these real contenders through trades by stacking great contracts, stacking good players on good deals so that you can piece together offers for these stars when they become available, right? So I think really the focus shouldn't just be on like we have to maintain our picks because we want to be able to trade for a guy, or we have to keep our cap space so we can sign Giannis or Jokic in 2 years. Like the odds of that happening are so slim that you really just need to get assets. Get good players, build depth, and then if a star player says, hey, I want to go there, I want out, you have the pieces to put together and trade, And so I think to me the strategy that they decide to move forward with is way more important than like, are they going to fix it this year? The other side of that, to answer your question, I don't think they can fix it this year. I think you can get a wing, if you can get an Herb Jones level guy, yeah, I think he'll give them a shot to get to the conference finals, but it's multiple players that you need. There's multiple guys you got to build out. I think the only urgency this year is you can't just let $40 million expire. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't. You got to do something with it.
That's a crazy number to just like let go away. You know what I mean? So you can get these types of players that we're talking about that you can build trade packages around or that you can build depth with expiring deals. Expiring deals still hold weight and currency, especially in this cap with this apron. You just got to wait. Like Clippers probably never trade with us, but are they going to blow it up? Like, can I steal a Derek Jones or a Chris Dunn for, a second? Like you really, if you have to pick and choose your spots. Like the Rui trade was great, right? Because he was a guy nobody really knew was available. He's been a Laker for a couple of years now. Like that was a good trade. You traded seconds, you got Rui. You need to find that like again and again and again. That's how the great teams really operate. And I think that's more important than like, what's the home run? Who's the one guy we can get?
Hell yeah, man. I think I think we see like a move or two, but something around the margins, and we'll
Second
probably
round
get the
picks and
infamous.
expirings.
We'll wait for the buyout market. See
We can
if
use 3 picks this summer, and we can only use 1 right now. Yeah.
I know, and maybe we'll get the angle of like, oh, we got to see what our rookies and young players, and Adu Thero is going to get more playing time and see what that gets us. But thanks, Belal. It was great chopping it up with you on the Lakers, the State of the Union episode. Tell everyone where they can find you. I know you're doing some exciting things.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Twitter, you can find me. I've got my Twitter handle down there. On Instagram at Bill Knows Ball. If you want to see some of my content, you can check out at Basketball on IG or TikTok. And that's kind of what we're doing. Or you can find me just ranting about the Lakers on Twitter and talking about JJ needing to bench Rui and play Thiero, and just kind of like what we did here, just on Twitter. So
exactly.
But I appreciate you having me back on, dude. It's nice chopping it up with you.
It's been great. Especially me being out in Boston, I don't really get to talk to too many Lakers fans about Lakers topics. So it's great to chop it up.
Absolutely.
Well, that's it for this episode. We'll try to make this a little bit more. They'll have some cadence to it, and just so like as the season progresses, there'll be more topics and whatnot, and we'll try to do it like on night. We were trying to do it yesterday, but then we realized that the Spurs are Lakers are playing. I was like, it's not a good day to do it, but it was fun. So that's it for this episode of Rings and Things. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and make sure you give it a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel.
Yes, sir. Peace. Appreciate you.